All right, welcome into this edition of Carp's Corners. We sit here, talk about some of the things that have happened heading towards the new year. With that means the college football playoff, the semifinals will be happening this upcoming weekend as we begin to turn the page on 2021, head into 2022, talk about some NFL stuff, the good, the bad, and everything that's going on. Some of the good and bad news from college football. Had a lot of bowl games go off. You know what? People can say there's too many, all these different things. I found these bowl games to be highly entertaining. I think that they've really looked pretty good thus far, but they do have it. There is a big issue that they're having to deal with. And so we'll get into that and everything that's happening as well. I want to let you know this edition, a little different backdrop, a little different background. First time my family and I have done this after Christmas, packed up, drove down to the Panhandle of Florida, the 38 beaches down here, the Destin and Seaside region, and want to enjoy some of that white sand, a little warm weather, and some of that 65-degree ocean water, which you got the pool out back, but I prefer the ocean. So sitting here in the bedroom doing this, next episode, I'm going to try to even work it out on the balcony so you can take a look at some of those beautiful white sandy beaches, behind us and enjoy it. For a northerner, 65, 67-degree ocean water isn't all that cold. So I enjoy it, look at it a little bit as a cold tub, get those legs loosened up and kind of enjoy it and relax a little bit, as we plow forward, then get back for the new year to be able to sit down, in the home, lock it on those games on New Year's Eve, and then even the games as well on New Year's Day, because there's a lot of good stuff coming in. But, one of the big issues is college football right now. They're struggling. College basketball is struggling even more. I mean, they've had, I believe, over 100 games canceled. A lot of things, going on right there that they've got to get figured out. And, college football, I believe 3 bowl games have been canceled. One other is hanging in the balance. We'll get into, some of those games and some of the things that have happened and been set out of there. And it's unfortunate because I really want to see these players get a chance to play, finish out their seasons the right way, get a chance to be able to lace it up one more time. And because it's not the same for every player. We look at this as for many of these guys, they're going on to the NFL, they're going to play again. For a lot of these players, whether they're starters, special teams guys, maybe they get 5-7 snaps in a game. It's the last time they're going to get a chance to be able to put on that jersey. And so thinking that they had one more opportunity to go play in a bowl game and then have that taken away from them, and this is for players on teams that had to cancel, and then the team that was on the other end that lost their opponent. I mean, I understand. Listen, I'm not placing fault on anybody, just the opportunity that was taken away from some of those guys. It's devastating. It's devastating to see. And every time I moved on a level, whether it was from high school to the NFL to college, and then ultimately the NFL and onward into regular civilian life, you always remember your last game. And it's unfortunate, when that happens. I remember my last game in high school, how the outcome of that was. I remember the last play in that one. I remember my last game in college, last time I was on the field and I broke my ankle in the final play. I remember my last game in the NFL when I was playing for the New England Patriots. And so you remember those final games and what that means and how it shaped your life, those emotional experiences. And so as we look at some of these guys, say, yeah, they're going on to bigger and better things. Yeah, they're going on to things that are bigger and maybe better, but you still can't replace those emotional experiences and those opportunities. And so here's the problem now. As I mentioned, we had, 3 games canceled, 1 game's hanging in the balance for college football. And, as we learn things, everyone say follow the science. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I do know this, that it's called the practice of medicine for a reason. I believe that intelligent people, they make decisions with the best information available at the time. And then as new information presents itself, you take that information, you parcel it out, and then you make new and better decisions based upon that updated information. And so that's one of the things that we're battling right now in college athletics. You saw the NFL make a hard right turn. They realized, hey, they put these safety protocols in, and they want to make sure for the health and safety. And if I have to hear the term again, and I throw it at my kids and throw it around all the time, out of an abundance of caution and care, listen, I'm not here to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see on a football field, I don't want to see anyone get sick. I don't want to see anything happen. Reality is those things do happen. And sometimes you have control to mitigate some of that stuff. Sometimes you don't. But as we look at this and we've watched, COVID and these protocols, these practices, these procedures evolve, we need to make sure that we're evolving, or I guess as the information on COVID evolves, we need to have those things evolve as well. And that's one of the things I think college football has really done a poor job at. Their protocols, their practices, their procedures haven't necessarily evolved and kept up with the information. And so we're seeing this now that we're making decisions today based upon things that were set in course 18 months ago. And that's really tough for players to handle. It's tough for coaches to handle. It's tough to be able to digest. And so as we look at, the transmissibility, the severity of illness and all these things that happen, yeah, you're more likely to get it. You're less likely to become severely ill. You get it even when you're vaccinated. You can transmit even when you're vaccinated. So we have to figure out people's risk tolerances for things. I've always been someone, I would say I'm more on the line of less risk averse. I'm more willing to take risks, especially when it's with my own body. And maybe that comes as a function of playing the game of football, being an athlete, understanding what goes into that, and understanding the fact that, there's some good things that can happen. There's bad things that can happen. And understand you can't mitigate all that risk. Some people are going to be more risk averse. And I get that. And I respect it. You can have people with different risk profiles and still be friends, right? Is that not how it works? I think we can. And so just understanding that and making some new and better decisions of everything that's going on and how we need to operate and what we need to be able to do. And so that is the stuff that we need to be able to absorb for this college football season, understand, and especially moving into next year in spring ball and for the rest of basketball season, because they're still in the midst of it. College football is still wrapping up, and hopefully nothing happens with the semifinal and the championship game. But really, those games, they matter for 4 teams. The rest of the games, they matter for teams as well. And I don't want to see those games be put in jeopardy. I don't want to see players missing games, especially for those guys who are playing their last game. We've got the Military Bowl, Boston College, 40 players are out. They can't play ECU. And I get it. I understand, ECU, they're upset. The guys with Boston College, whether it's opt-outs, whether it's transfer, and those things, transfer portal, guys transferring out there, and then guys testing positive. Wasabe Fenway Bowl, Virginia's out versus SMU. That's going to be on Wednesday. I guess here's the one thing with Virginia. Okay, they had a couple guys test positive, number of players, they said. And so with that, then they took that information and then they tested everybody on their team, asymptomatic, everyone else. And you know what? They're going to have some positive tests. Well, it turned out they had a lot of guys that had it, completely asymptomatic. Were they transferring it? Yeah. If you would have ever known, would they have gone out and played? What would a super spreader been? I don't know. I do know this. Last year, there was no vaccine. And there were times where guys played in games who they ended up knowing later were close contacts and actually impacted and affected. And there wasn't some super spreader event. Now that, this new deal, maybe it's more Omicron, more transmissible, less deadly. I don't know. But I do know when we start to test people who aren't sick, that to me is starting to border on a little bit of lunacy here. And so that's where Nick Carparelli, the executive director of the bowl season. Now, I didn't even realize that this was a thing until this year. And they started talking about expanding the playoffs, and we need to get the bowl system involved and have more bowl games, and how they were against neutral sites, or against home sites, and they wanted all the bowls to continue to be incorporated. Where I think first round neutral or home sites, that's fantastic. Watching some of these FCS games, some of the Division II games, that's great. I mean, it looks fantastic getting their home crowd, everybody juiced up behind their players. And so I don't necessarily agree with Nick on everything. And I understand, his position exists because of the bowl system, and he needs it to continue to exist to keep his job. So it's in his own self-interest to go out here and champion the bowls. And that makes a lot of sense. But he comes out and says, in regards to the COVID protocols, that they're outdated and need to be adjusted immediately. They're causing more problems than there need to be. And I agree with him in that. And what's happening? The NFL made a switch. Now, I understand the NFL's private business, and college athletics is supposed to be a public, enterprise, quasi-government organizations. These big public schools, and a lot of them are drivers in their state. The highest paid and state employees are a lot of times the men's basketball and football coaches in the state. So I get it. I understand. There's a difference, but it's still now college football has become big business, and it needs to begin to operate a little bit that way, because those are the expectations that we put on the players, and those should be the expectations that we have for the operations as well. Now, Nick Carparelli, the executive director of bowl season, did walk that back, a little bit. He talked to Adam Rittenberg, and then he talked about the health and safety of players. But that's when he did reference the NFL's changes and what they were able to do and how they were able to make it work. And that's the thing I think that's the most impressive is we sit here and demonize the NFL and vilify them and this and that and players' safety. And it goes back to the concussions and back when my dad played when they're jamming needles and dues to play all the time. But the product's out there. And they've come a long way, but games are always going to be played. They're putting the product first. And players, they have their choice of whether or not they want to do it. I'm all for taking care of the players, but make sure that you're protecting them from something that they want to be protected from and need to be protected from as well. And with that, Miami, the third bowl game, Miami's out of the Sun Bowl. Washington State is down in El Paso. They're still trying to find an opponent. And I understand Miami, like they said, they had a number of guys test. They're trying to get people out of there, trying to figure this thing out a little bit. And, Mario Cristobal is coming in, Manny Diaz is out. So it's a little bit sideways. And so, their desire to play, you can understand that. The players want to, but administratively, it's a little bit difficult and challenging. I just don't want to see any more of these games get canceled. I keep looking through the schedule. I enjoy watching them. I love watching football. It's going to be over soon, folks. It will be over. College football will be over soon. There's not many games left this year in 2021. There's going to be a handful in 2022. The NFL has, a couple weeks left, and then we're sliding right in. You're going to have to give you a 17th game, and then they're sliding into the playoffs. And so that's going to be over soon. So enjoy it while you have it. Now, some other news, and this is something that I think I had a little bit of headlines. How important is it? How big of a deal is it? Georgia's playing Michigan in the Peach Bowl. Dan Lanning, their head coach, their defensive coordinator is going to be the head coach at Oregon. He's going to call the defenses for Georgia. He's called them all year. It's been their young dude, up and comer, really talented. Kirby Smart thinks a lot of them. No one's really made a big deal of it yet. I have a little bit of experience with this. Mark D'Antonio, our defensive coordinator, when I was at Ohio State, got the Cincinnati job. We were playing Kansas State in the Fiesta Bowl, and that was back. It was a BCS game, not the title game. Played in that the year before, but he stayed on. He wanted to finish the season. It was a big enough game to him that he thought it was important to finish that thing out. And so it was hard. He had to juggle his staff, hiring guys, recruiting, trying to cobble that thing together. From all accounts, Dan Lanning's done a pretty good job. He's put together a pretty nice staff up at Oregon. And I think you're able to do this. For Georgia Bulldog fans, I don't think you need to worry. I think you can do this and take this job and still maintain your job through the rest of the year. Dan Lanning, I guarantee you, wants to win a national championship. He wants to be a good coach at Oregon. And so Oregon fans, don't fret either. This is a win for everybody. Because you know what helps Dan Lanning in recruiting more than anything else? Being able to walk in there and say, I won a national championship. If he beats Michigan, he beats Alabama as the defensive coordinator, puts on a great show, or Cincinnati. I don't want to besmirch them as well. I just think if you're able to go and you're beating these big teams, that is the greatest marketing you can have as a head coach. I was the defensive coordinator here. I stayed on. I got our staff together. Hey, this is what we can do for you. This is the heights that I want to take the Oregon football program to. And it's a great marketing opportunity because make no mistake about it. They're going to be talking about it all during the broadcast. They're going to show Dan Lanning, future coach of Oregon. Next year, the 2022 head coach, he will be that guy. I mean, it's not speculation. That's fact. That's going to be something that is transpiring. So I think it's great. So Georgia fans, don't worry. Oregon fans, don't worry. I looked back at Mark D'Antonio. Every time he got on the bus, he's calling recruits. He's calling coaches for his staff. He's trying to get all that figured out. But he made sure his team was prepared. And we were prepared mightily. We did a great job. And he prepared us for that game. So you can do both. It's a lot of work. I'm not saying that it's not taxing, but it can be done. So Bulldog fans, don't worry. Within that game, Blake Corum, Michigan's speedster running back, had an ankle injury a while ago. He's had some hamstring and beat up a little bit. Says it's 100% ready to go. This is why this is a big deal in this game. Points will be at a premium. I believe the over-under is still sitting 44, 45, 46. And it's not up in the 50s, 60s. This is going to be a low-scoring game in the Peach Bowl between the Wolverines and the Bulldogs. Both teams have solid defensive fronts. They've got good offensive lines. They don't really throw the ball all that well. They don't even try to, for the most part. They want to run it and beat you up with defense. So big plays matter. Turnovers will matter. Field position will matter. And with those big plays, as good as Hassan Haskins is for Michigan, he's their power back. He is their thumper. And he might carry the ball 15 times for like 70 yards in this game. And they might be the toughest 70 to 75 yards pounding into that Bulldog defensive front. But Blake Corum's he's the home run threat. He's the guy that if you get him out in space, he can take it the distance. His ability to do that, if he can rip off one, that will be critical for the Michigan Wolverine offense. If they can do that, that home run, because that's one time that you don't have to drive the field 12 plays, 13 plays, 14 plays, trying to just bash in to an unbelievable front. And they're going to do some things, and I understand they're going to have some stuff out there, and they'll be ready to go. You know, Josh Gaddis, their offensive coordinator, they're going to try to spread some things out, wear down in that front, but you need the guy who can take it the distance. 20 yards and 30 yards is nice, but if you can rip off a 50, 60-yarder, it's a lot easier to play offense when you have a home run threat like that. It makes a big difference. And so him being 100% healthy, whether it's just him saying that or not, but he still has days until the game. And if he feels good, that is huge for Michigan to be able to have that home run threat back, because the team that is able to make those big plays, create a turnover, not have a special teams blunder. It's going to be a couple of things, getting those short fields on offense. And then if you can have a home run, guy breaks a tackle, maybe it's a 3rd and 1, 4th down. You've seen it happen a million times, or you get to like a single or double 2-level defense where you don't have that deep safety. You're pushing to stop it at the line of scrimmage. And all of a sudden you make one guy miss, you in the hole, and boom, it's off to the races. That's what Blake Corum can do. He has the ability to make guys miss, get to the perimeter, shake that safety, and go to town. He's going to need to be able to do that. Some other news, and I think this is just, entertaining and anecdotal, because I've referred to him this, called a couple of Cincinnati games this year. And I always thought it was important to put this on there to talk about his pedigree. But Jerome Ford, Cincinnati's star running back, everyone calls him the Bama transfer. Bama transfer, Bama transfer, Jerome Ford. Look at him rip off that run. Look at the speed. Look at the athleticism. Look at all the things he possesses. It's pretty fantastic. Bama transfer. Comes out. I'm not the Bama transfer. I'm a UC Bearcat. Let's refer to me as that. It's huge for Luke Fickell as a recruiting ploy, and to have him, one of these elite players who went to Bama, who was sitting behind some other running backs. And by the way, Bama's struggling to run the football this year. They've been inconsistent. They don't have the Derrick Henry, the Najee Harris, the guys up there hammer, and can take it the distance. Jerome Ford looks to be that guy. He's going to get his shot against his former team. I guarantee you he's a little salty about the way it turned out. But he's been with Cincinnati now for a couple of seasons. He hit a home run last year against Georgia. He's the guy that can make the difference for this team. And I love the fact that he's digging in, drawing a line in the sand. And this is honestly, it's a little bit of signaling to the rest of his team. I'm here with you guys. We can do this against them. Whether they can or not is irrelevant, but it's great to see something like this happen. And it's great for Luke Fickell, who just wrapped up another top 40 recruiting class, which, if you're Ohio State, Bama, Clemson, Georgia, you roll your eyes at that a little bit, but for a school that's a non-power 5 to be in the mid-30s again is pretty impressive. They get those guys, they develop them, and then they also bring in some transfers like Jerome Ford, who now says, hey, not the Bama transfer anymore. I'm a UC Bearcat. I like to see that. I like to respect it. Last little piece, a nugget of some college football before we dive into the NFL. The game of the week that I'm going to be juiced up on, I believe it's Wednesday night, the Cheeze It Bowl. Clemson favored by a point over Iowa State. So Breece Hall isn't playing, their star running back. Xavier Hutchinson, the star receiver, said he's coming back for another year at Iowa State. Made some big plays for the Cyclones this year. Brock Purdy's going to be playing their senior quarterback. He's going to be moving on, he graduated, hopefully going to the NFL in his mind. But this is why I think it's intriguing. Not a great season for Iowa State, 7-5. I guarantee you, Matt Campbell's not feeling great, about how it went down. This was supposed to be the year that they get it done, and they lose to Iowa early in the season, and things kind of snowball a little bit. and then now Breece Hall opts out for the game. So that's less than ideal when it comes to that. But they're going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to go. They're playing. If you would have told them at the beginning of the season, you're going to play Clemson in the bowl game, they probably would have thought they were making the college football playoff. Now, this isn't the playoff, and Clemson obviously wasn't as good. They were 9-3, lost to Georgia, struggled a little bit in the ACC, had a couple of losses, but finished really, really strong. Now, they've had some departures. Brent Venables is gone. They've lost defensive coordinator. They've lost some offensive staff as well. They're in a state of transition, losing both coordinators. Let's see how far DJ Uiagalelei has come. Let's see how far that Clemson offense has come against a pretty good, when they put it together, Cyclone defense. And so this is a matchup that I would have said at the beginning of the season, this could have been maybe a semifinal matchup. Even after Clemson lost to Georgia, you're thinking, man, like Clemson defense is good. Got some dudes out there. And Iowa State, they had all this offensive firepower. Now they're going to be, like I said, without a little bit of it, with Breece Hall opting out, the star running back, and moving on. They still have a lot of guys there. They talk about not having 5-star recruits, but 5-star culture. And so this will be a battle of that, because both of these programs, I think, pride themselves on culture and developing players. Clemson probably gets a little better player, but I think that this is something that's going to be really big and very, very exciting. It's the bowl game of the week outside of, once we get to the weekend and the New Year's Six and semifinal and all those things, like it's a lot different. And so, for a midweek bowl game, something that's going on that maybe might not attract a lot of your attention, may I steer you towards this game, because I think it should be a good one. I said the line's really tight, and it's two teams that at the beginning of the year had high expectations. Now, on to the NFL. Some questions for the Cleveland Browns. They lose a heartbreaker, 24-22 to Green Bay. I didn't think they had a shot to win this game. Baker didn't play great, to say the least. Throws a pick that ends the game. They're in field goal range. They win that game. They're still in the playoff hunt. Losing it, they could win their last two, and it's going to be long odds for them to get in. They're going to need a lot of help at this point from other teams losing and to get through in tiebreakers, because it's such a cluster right there in the mid-tier of the AFC. But some questions. Baker will be back next year. He's going to be back in the Cleveland Browns. They've exercised his option. Will that even matter, though? You playing a year with a lame duck quarterback? What could he do next year, to ultimately change the fortunes of his career with the Cleveland Browns and maybe his NFL fortunes in general? How does that ultimately look? What could he do? So will it even matter that he comes back, and that he's back as a starter? Then the other question is, will there be competition? They bring Case Keenum back in there and kind of open that thing up. Say, may the best man win. Are they trying to find another veteran guy? If there's somebody that falls to them, maybe in the second round, the Browns, they don't make the playoffs. They'll be picking right there in the middle of the draft order. If there's someone that falls to them in the second round, maybe falls late in the first, do they jump up and get him? That's always an option. Bringing in that competition. The second rounder, I think Baker could potentially beat him out. And if he plays well, I think that would bode well. And maybe that would light a fire in him. I don't know. I still think there's talent in Baker, and we'll go through all the things that have happened to him, but do you want, as a fan of the Cleveland Browns, do you want to see competition, or do you want to see him back there? I think Baker kind of embodies everything that Cleveland is. He's a fighter. He's an undersized dude. He's had a long pathway to get to where he's been. He was the walk-on that transferred, lost his job, transferred, ultimately wins a Heisman Trophy, becomes a first-round pick. Like, he's done all these things. It's amazing. It's like Gladiator, his story of where he's come from, what he's been able to do. Can he succeed in the NFL? I think that he can, but I've been thinking that the whole time, and I've been disappointed with some of the decisions he's made and how he's operated. We can talk about his offensive line and the running back injuries that they've battled this year. We can talk about the wide receivers outside of OBJ, how really good were they? Juice Landry, he's good, but he can't really separate. They don't really have a home run threat down the field. You can talk about his injuries and the things that he's battled through. The knee, the shoulder, real stuff, fractured humeral head, all things that are real, all things. People even didn't like some of the play calling with Kevin Stefanski. They're leaning in on that. Does all that stuff matter? All those excuses, are they reasons? Are they both? Yeah, I think there is some of that. But I honestly think there should be competition for Cleveland next year at quarterback. And that's not a knock on Baker. It's saying, like, Baker, if you're the better quarterback, go prove it. Go take this team to be 12-5 next year. This year, COVID, everything, injuries, sometimes it just works against you. Last year may have been the year to make the run, Cleveland Browns fans. And you get Chad Henne have a scramble on you, and gets it to a 4th and 2 that they ultimately convert and move on. It's amazing. You thought this year just seemed like the natural progression. Well, it's not how it works in the NFL, folks. It's not how it works. Every year is an island unto itself. You can carry a little momentum, but you got to get it done each and every year. Teams and rosters are always going to be a little bit different, but this Cleveland Browns roster is really, really talented. You had a couple more draft picks. I think they should take, a receiver in the first round if there's one there. Maybe you pick up a guy in free agency. But I think ultimately you should have some competition. I think competition would bring out the best in Baker Mayfield. I really do. If you look at how he operates, he's a guy that loves to fight the odds. And the fact that you said we're going to open it up, Baker's still here. He has just as much opportunity to win it as anybody, but it's open competition. I think that honestly would bring out the best in him. And you would see what he truly has. He'd be healthy, hopefully get through everything in the offseason, get everything worked out, and then you could really judge. Most people are probably writing him off at this point. I'm not ready to write him off yet, but I think competition for him would ultimately be healthy. Another big question now in the NFL. Is Dallas back? Are the Cowboys, were all their offensive problems solved? Coach, they're playing the Redskins. It was 42-0 at halftime. Sat there and watched that game like, this is amazing. Dak's throwing touchdowns, the running backs, receivers, tight ends, offensive linemen. Everybody, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown. Dak's doing his best Oprah out there. And it was impressive. Did a great job with it. Did a great job. I'm not going to sit here based upon that one and say, hey, they can go beat Tampa Bay. They can go beat Green Bay. Like San Francisco, Arizona, even though they're struggling a little bit, like I can't put them there yet. I got to watch you do that against one of those teams. I mean, not beat them like that, but just go win the game and play really well on offense. Cowboys have struggled in the red zone. They were a lot better against Washington, but this Washington defense is a shell of what I thought we would see at the beginning of the year. And so let's not pretend like this is the greatest Washington defense that's ever been assembled. They have the Washington football team has some work to do. And so do the Dallas Cowboys. Looked a lot better. Anytime you have 42 points at halftime, you score 56 in an NFL game. Listen, go on, dust your shoulder off. That's a heck of a performance. But you got to do it against some of these elite teams, especially in the NFC. We're going against a guy in Aaron Rodgers who, man, he is on a mission this year, on a mission. And so you're going to have to be efficient in the red zone. Coming into that game, Dallas, in their last 3 games, was, I think, in the bottom 3 or 4 in red zone efficiency in the NFL. They have to continue to get better. They got to run the ball down there. Maybe the solution is you run Dak a little bit more, but you have to be more efficient. Guys have to win their one-on-one routes. And a little bit of it, goes into the offensive play calling bucket as well. And so there's some questions that they're going to need to answer there. You can't answer them against Washington, though. The Washington football team is not going to provide you the answers. Another anomaly that we've been seeing in the NFL, and it's been crazy this year. And we always say the old saying and phrase, any given Sunday. It's true in the NFL. It is highly true. But this year, it seems like it's been more true than ever before. You look at the Chargers getting beat by the Texans, getting beat pretty soundly. And so you're thinking, how the heck does this happen? The Chargers sitting there going to this game 8-6. They win the game 9-6. Like, they're firmly in control of getting a wild card spot. Heck, maybe they could find a way to sneak up on the Chiefs if they struggle, but they lose a game to the Texans. It's a team that we kind of questions. They've won some games this year, but were they really even trying to win? But you look at some of these different games this year, some double-digit favorites. And not all these were double digits, but if you just look back on how these teams have fared and the directions they've gone, heck, the Jags beat the Bills. The Saints were strong. They beat the Bucks 9-0. You had the Jets beating the Bengals. You had the Bears beating the Bengals earlier in the year. And this year with the NFL, I think with COVID and everything else, if you're a fan of a team that you think has it locked up in the playoffs, unless they've secured their spot, it doesn't matter who they're playing. the last couple of games. I don't want to hear about, well, they've got the easiest schedule remaining. You got the fifth easiest schedule remaining. No, don't give me that. Because it's gone to show this year, man, any given Sunday is more true now than ever before. No one can take for granted any of these things about any of the games. And so even if you think your team has long odds, final 2 games, final 2 weeks of the season, they've got to win. They need some help. And it doesn't look like these teams will lose. Don't rule anything out. There's still a long way to go in this race. There's still a heck of a long way to go in this race. And since I brought up the Cincinnati Bengals and 2 of their losses, yes, the 9-6 Bengals who lost to both the Bears and lost to the New York Jets. Are they the team to beat in the AFC North for the future? I say yes. Joe Burrow just threw for 525 yards. He's under 25 years old. You've got Mixon, under 25. You have T. Higgins. You have Jamar Chase. All those guys are under 25 years. You have a defense that's pretty young and got a lot younger and is playing pretty good football. You have an offensive line that's continuing to grow, and you need to continue to work on it there. But the Cincinnati Bengals have all the ingredients to be one of the teams at the top of the heap at the AFC for the next 5 to 7 years. You got to keep that guy healthy behind center. I think we saw what happened last year when he goes out. But Joe Burrow is playing some great football. Should know he's my fantasy quarterback. Love that guy. He found me a way to win last week. And T. Higgins was there on the team as well. And no one wants to hear about anyone else's fantasy team. But I'm going to sit here and tell you that if you look at this fantasy team that is the Cincinnati Bengals, it is a quarterback's fantasy with how well these receivers are playing and how well Joe Burrow is playing. I mean, I hate to say this. If he was on the Cleveland Browns, I think the Cleveland Browns would have won 12 or 13 games this year. Like Joe Burrow, not all number 1 overall picks are created equal. And he was kind of people viewed him as a 1-year sensation. He's that overnight success that took 20 years. He's that overnight success that's been grinding. The kid out of Athens that really nobody wanted, came into Ohio State as a 4-star, never got a chance to play, transfers to LSU. That's a decent year his first year, and then a meteoric rise. But he put in so much work along the way. So much work. Business that's the overnight success story. It takes 20 years. Well, in college sports, it's probably more like in professional sports, it probably took 5 or 6. But you're seeing the fruits of those labor right now for Joe Burrow and the team they put around him. And we talked about Zach Taylor getting fired earlier this season. Fired. I mean, he might be in running for coach of the year, for heaven's sake, with what they've been able to do. And Cincinnati has been wildly, wildly impressive. Lastly, I'm going to leave with this. My guy, Aaron Rodgers, who I love. I love to hate him as a defensive player. Playing against Aaron made me sick all the time because he was so darn good with his arm. And then when everything else broke down, he'd scramble on a 3rd and 7 and pick up 8 and toss the ball to the official right in front of you. Give like the little wink in the gun. And I loved it. I love Aaron. His person, I wanted to punch him in the side of the head. Like, he's one of the guys that you almost will take a 15-yarder and a $25,000 fine just to light up into the bench, because he's so frustrating to play against because he's that good. And he lets you know it in a very subtle way. But after the game, he breaks Favre's record, for, pass touchdowns in Green Bay history. He does very, very respectful to Favre and learning behind greatness for 3 years and all this stuff. He has a great post game with Aaron Andrews, and you can see it, man. And you can see the passion. And he keeps his emotions in check, and he's a very dry guy, and he's very calculated, as we all know, with how he answers things. But what I did think was funny is we go through all these protocols, all the rigmarole, and him and Aaron Andrews are 10 feet apart or whatever the heck they are. And then after the interview, they stay on him, they keep it rolling. He peels the headset, and then he goes and they gives her a high five. They embrace and a hug. I'm like, this is the guy that can't do live interviews at a podium. And now they're hugging on the field. And believe me, he's probably getting reprimanded. She's getting reprimanded. What are we talking about? I mean, it's just entertaining. But it's another way that Aaron, A and an E, are both kind of trolling everything that's going on in the NFL. And I hope that she doesn't get in any trouble. And I don't know what you're going to do to a guy who, by all accounts, I think is probably going to win the MVP. We'll see how vengeful and how scorned the media can be with how truly, offended they were about all the COVID stuff and the misleading and everything. to see if he can win the MVP, because he's played as well as he's played better than anybody this year, week in and week out. He's been good and he's been steady and very effective and productive as always. Well, that ends this edition of Carp's Corner, the vacation edition, the 30A edition. Next time I might be coming from outside. I just got to keep the wind down. I want you guys to feel like you're listening in a wind tunnel. So enjoy it. Enjoy this week of bowl games. Have a great time. And we'll talk to you soon.